The third wing of the table begins with an expression of grieving for this loss of respect. Yes, but once one finds it, it is beautiful to behold. You can see the relationship between the sline's great roots. The strength in the image on the plate, next to the accepted and trivial, makes them in a competition over who can make the greatest banana or the best sign. Mary Shelley, whose name appears on the heritage. This is one of my favorite plates. I tried to use the black women's experience to represent women's masking, women's rage, women's sorrow, for which I incorporated African motifs. The raised arm on the plate relates to Truth's famous words. Look at me, look at my arm, it's plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me, and ain't I a woman? The breast forms relate to another story. She was such a strong speaker that one day during her speech in a church, a man stood up and demanded that she be examined privately by the women. He insisted that she must be a man because he didn't believe that a woman could be so powerful. Her runner combines African strip weaving with piece quilting as a way of representing the infusion of African textile techniques into American quilts. Female slaves often pieced small bits of strip-woven fabric into the quilts they made on the plantations as a way of preserving their cultural identity. Emily Dickinson was born in Massachusetts in 1830. She chose to be a recluse in order to have the freedom to write. Her writing was completely at odds with prevailing ideas of what poetry and women were supposed to be. Only 7 of her more than 1,700 poems were published during her lifetime. She bound them with a darning needle into tiny books, which were only found after her death. People say to me, but Dickinson was such a strong woman, why portray her in pink lace? But my point here is, of course she was a strong woman, but she was almost smothered in the Victorian ideal. The plate is done with a traditional China painting technique called lace draping, which we adapted for our own use. If you look closely at the runner, you can see it's done in lace and a technique called ribbon work, brought to the project by a woman whose mother had passed her ribbons and this 19th century technique down to her. I wanted to both honor and preserve what would have otherwise been a lost art. I'd now like you to notice the place setting for one of the first major female composers, Ethel Smythe. The wing image on the plate becomes the top of the piano, pressing down on the plate, a symbol of the way Smythe was suppressed. The tailored suit she habitually wore is represented on the runner, but this suit is taken in at the seams to represent how Smythe's potential was unrealized because of the resistance of the musical establishment of her time. Margaret Sanger's image is reaching down underneath the plate in a struggle to lift itself off. Sanger, a pioneer in reproductive freedom, believed that if women could choose when or whether to bear children, it would lead to a profound change in the world. In my research, I encountered a beautiful blood-red butterfly called Sangaris, and I gave its color and its spirit to the Sanger plate. In the runner design, I transformed an image of the female reproductive system into an environment for this plate. The edges of the runner are irregular, a symbol of how, because of Sanger's work, women were helped in their effort to break loose from their containment. The plate and runner for Natalie Varney, who was a writer and aphorist, have tremendous congruence, a reference to the fact that Varney created a world in which she could live as she desired. She was one of the first women to openly acknowledge her lesbianism. She supported other creative women by holding a salon in Paris for 60 years, where women shared their work and celebrated their sexual preference. Both her plate and her runner are distinctly Art Nouveau in style. The runner is done as a glorious beaded butterfly, and the image of the lily, the name by which Varney was known, graces her plate. As we moved around the table, you might themes found in the earlier plates and runners. For example, you'll see an echo of the forms I used in Sappho's plate in Virginia Woolf's plate. Forms also found in the primordial goddess plate. I intended this as a metaphor for the repeated efforts women have made throughout history to introduce their experience into the culture against overwhelming odds. Now we come to the last two place settings on the dinner party table, Virginia Woolf and Georgia O'Keeffe, who represent that point in time when women began to regain their power through the creative act. Woolf and O'Keeffe marked that moment in history when women began to have their own language for the first time. Virginia Woolf created the beginnings of a female form language in literature, and O'Keeffe developed an analogous form language in art. Having a form language means that we can begin to express who we have been and what we want to become. Both of these plates are highly dimensional. The center of the Virginia Woolf plate is an opening, head-like form with a series of interior egg-like shapes that reiterate the forms in the center of the fertile goddess plate and also the flowering center in the Sappho plate. But here, the iconography is taken to a fully dimensional point. The Woolf plate sits on a very simple runner made from a sheet of yellow chiffon whose edge breaks away. I refer to both her book, The Waves, and to her tragic suicide by drowning. The Georgia O'Keeffe plate is a fusion of O'Keeffe's imagery and mine. It is based upon her famous painting of the iris, which has a dark, mysterious center, which for me reflects the mystery of life. This image also reiterates the center core in the primordial goddess plate, and thus links the first and the last plate.
Binary, yeah.